Um, the first week, when we talked about sin and brokenness and how the country of Panem was being held captive by the capital and being oppressed. And then the next week, we talked about how hope began to be seen when Katniss defeated and won the Hunger Games. And we were reminded that there was also a guy named Jesus that also brought a little bit of hope to the world that he was in. And then last week we began to hear about how the hope that Jesus brought began to catch fire, just like with Katniss, the hope began to catch fire. And people began to get excited and think that maybe they can overcome some of the oppression and brokenness that they had experienced in their world. And so we talked about how the church began to take root in Acts. And so tonight we're going to be talking about how the kingdom has come and how the church has found hope and has established itself. And so in some real life examples with the folks that are up here, and they're going to introduce themselves. And I know that some of you know Amanda and Nico because they're like, they're one of y'all. But I'm excited about the examples of hope that each of them brings. So, Eric.
I'm Eric Burton Krieger. I'm one of the pastors here. My wife Megan's a small group leader. And the story I want to tell you all is about a guy named John who lives in our neighborhood. We moved in probably a year and a half ago to a neighborhood in Nashville that has quite a bit of poverty. And so when we first arrived, a guy named John showed up at our front door. He wanted to know if there were any yard projects or chores that he could do. And so we hired him to help out a little bit. And then John just kept showing up. And sometimes when he showed up, you could tell that he'd been drinking. You could smell alcohol on his breath. Sometimes he'd say he was going to show up and then he wouldn't be able to. Sometimes when he came by, he would just need somebody to talk to. And so we've tried to create space on our front porch or walking down the street to catch up, to find out what's going on in John's life. And sometimes when he came by, he just really needed a meal. And so part of our hospitality to John became just opening our home and trying to give him some food. And so over time, what eventually happened is we built a relationship with John, who lives nearby, but is struggling. He's struggling with lots of different demons. And so we've been able to, we hope, be a little bit of a friend and the light of Christ in his life. But we struggle with how to do that. What does it look like for the kingdom to show up? And so every morning when I walk our dog through the park nearby and there's a homeless guy sleeping in one of the shelters, I have to ask myself, what does it look like for the kingdom of God to show up here? And continue to wrestle with that question. But I know that in some way, at least for John, I'm able to be a part of that work. And I pray that for the other people in my neighborhood, that begins to take root more and more.
Hi, I'm Amanda Hackett. I'm a senior at Berwyn High School, and I'm going to be talking about a mission trip that our church goes on every summer. It's called Camp Barnabas. It's a camp for children with special needs, and I know some of you have gone, so awesome. And I just want to talk about the brokenness in the world with children with special needs and adults. And I first saw the brokenness when I was in 7th grade, and I was just eating lunch, and I looked over and I saw a girl who couldn't sit at the lunch table just like we could. So that's really where my heart broke for them, and I just knew I wanted to work with them. So then 9th grade, when I had the opportunity to go on Camp Barnabas, and I got there, and the whole week I just saw the love and passion that the staff had for the children with special needs and treated them no differently. And I know that can be a challenge for us because I know that we don't see them as equals, even though they are. And now at school, I participate in the Best Buddies program, which is where you're paired with a student also with special needs, and you hang out with them outside of school. It's the joy of my day. And I'm a senior, and I'm going off to college this next year, and I want to be a special education teacher. So this is just the hope that Camp Barnabas has given me has just inspired me to pursue that hope in my own life and spread it throughout the world, and really let everyone know that children with special needs aren't different than us. So
thanks, Amanda. That was awesome. Hey guys, I'm Miss Carol. I lead a junior small group. I am here basically to tell you about the hope that I see every week at Room in the Inn game night ministry that high school students can go to on Tuesday nights. And I will share with you a friend of mine who I think you've met on an occasion or two, John, and his story. But I want to tell you about Rimini and Game Night Ministry. It's an opportunity to just sit with some of the homeless men or some of the guys and women who have maybe made bad choices and had to go to jail for those choices, for stealing or drug possession or actual, intoxication or whatever. So anyway, we actually go and we play games with these people, and it's wonderful to see their responses to us. And one in particular happened about 5 years ago, where I went and played games with some veterans and met John, Cowboy John, who his story is that he had drunk in one day, I think 4 cubes, and I'm not quite sure how many cans are in a cube, but it's probably a whole lot. And he wasn't doing too well and was trying to walk down the street, and the police picked him up. And he was going to go to jail. And they instead took pity on John and took him to Room in the Inn, where he was actually admitted into Room in the Inn's program and went through a long process of sobering up and finding hope. And that hope came from programs that Room in the Inn had and finding Christ. And he really struggled for a long time. And we met him a few months into his sobriety. And I've known John ever since. So this man that was addicted huge to alcohol, actually today, I know it probably doesn't sound like the Brentwoodian wonderful world, but John is actually working a full-time job at Panera, and they've asked him to be manager at Panera, which is huge. It's so huge, and he is such a great spirit. That man buys a gift for More Than a Toy Store, which is a toy ministry that More Than a Toy Store has. Every month he buys one toy to put away for More Than a Toy Store. He doesn't have a whole lot of money, guys. He makes $8, $9 an hour, which isn't much. He has to buy food and he has to pay for rent. This man is giving back. And so the hope that I see in the ministry that I'm at is that these people come in completely broken, just like I'm broken. I might not be an alcoholic, but I'm broken. I have my issues too. And the fact that we played games together and grew together, and this man is now one of my friends. He is somebody who is very dear to me. And there are many men at Room in the Inn and women at Room in the Inn who are broken, but the hope is that God is there for them. And all they have to do is reach out and touch him. And he will bring you back into his arms if you have wandered away and not want to listen to him. But anyway, thanks for listening to my story about John. And y'all come to Room in the Inn if you can.
Hey guys, I'm Nico Amachana. I'm one of the students here at BUMC, just in case you haven't seen me sitting with you. Anyway, I've experienced a lot with brokenness over the past few years, and I've also experienced how hope can arise from this brokenness. And every day I kind of stare it in the face. And I'm up here just to tell you a little bit about that. And so I want to tell you a story, and it's a story that I think parallels my own, and I kind of want to gloss over it in a way so that I can help you understand my own story. And so I want to tell the story of a man, and his name was Robert. And his last name was Amatrano. He was my father. And he decided to go into the Army after they pledged to pay his college tuition. And not too long later, he was frocked, which means he was promoted on the spot. He was promoted to the position of captain. And he led 500 men to Honduras, and he brought them all back. But this was during the time of the Sandinistan rebels fighting the Contras, and there was a lot of violence going on in this area at the time, and something happened to my father before he was sent home, and what happened changed him, and it changed my life also. And a lot of his friends, his dear friends, people he really, really loved, really, really cared for, they were in another squadron. And he was assigned to go excavate a helicopter crash not too long after he was down there. And he learned that his friends were on a helicopter, and the helicopter had been shot down by the Sandinistan rebels. And he was assigned to excavate the site and to identify those who were gone. And when he was there, he told me how his men were behind him, and how even though he just wanted to turn away, he did not want to be there. He said like he had to do it because if he didn't, then it was mission failure, and a failure was unacceptable. And from this experience, my father received a condition known as PTSD, otherwise known as post-traumatic stress disorder. And from this condition, he received something my mother and I often known as stone face. And this is where he believed that everything was a mission. Cooking dinner for the family was a mission. Picking me up from school was a mission. Even going down to the mailbox to get the mail was a mission. If he didn't do it right, it would be absolutely furious. And everything had to be in perfect order. He became the most strict perfectionist imaginable. I would be criticized for simple mistakes doing simple chores around the house, cleaning my room, cooking dinner for the family. And so I was often afraid to do little things like that. And every day it grew bigger, and this brokenness became something that was almost unimaginable. And he did certain things that tore my parents' marriage apart. And there was a day when he couldn't take it any longer. And I remember that day like yesterday. It was October 13th, 2009. And I remember it was a Tuesday, and I remember I was coming in from track practice. And I just remember my teachers just grabbing me in the hall and just escorting me to the principal's office. And I just remember seeing my mother. And there were people all around her, friends I hadn't seen in a long time, family members who I hadn't seen in a long time, pastors from this very church. And they were all surrounding her, and she looked up, and she said 3 words of which I will never, ever forget. Daddy died, honey. And it didn't take long for me to figure out that my father had committed suicide. And immediately I knew that my father had made the worst choice he could ever have made in his life. That was the wrong choice. But from what he chose, he threw me into a war. He threw me into a spiritual war. Whereas my father fought his physical war, his life and my life are parallels. Every day I'm forced to strap on armor, spiritual armor. Paul describes a similar occurrence in Ephesians. Every day I have to strap on armor in order to fight the devil himself, who will often tempt me with questions like, don't you wish your father was still here? Don't you wish that maybe you were more popular, or maybe you had better grades? And after studying Ephesians 2 years ago, and after going through this, I just told myself, I just remember my father just kind of looking at me and just saying, don't do this, buddy. Don't end up like me. Through my mistake, I know that you will succeed. You will. And whenever the enemy asks me those questions, I say to him, I am who I am. And I am proud of who I am. And I am proud of who I represent. I am proud of the God I represent. And this is why. God is the kind of God who does not just sit and watch his people suffer. The Lord is a God who will sink to his knees along with his people, and he will cry with them whenever they are hurting and whenever they are broken. And he is a perfect God. However, he makes the choice in order to feel everything we are feeling, in order to crawl with us and fight with us to the very, very end. He is our Father and he is our friend. And he makes this choice every single day of our lives for every single one of us here. And so no matter what struggling you may be going through, he feels that pain. He is right there, right beside you. And even in Joshua 1:9, it says, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, for I will follow you wherever you go." And so in this world, I see a kingdom of brokenness. But there's an even bigger kingdom. And it's the one of hope. And through this experience, I see hope every single day. And I acknowledge its presence, and I know it's there. Every day I see it. And through everything that's happened and everything I believe, God put that kingdom there. And it will always, always be there.
I want to thank each of you for sharing your stories of hope and of brokenness. And tonight, as we conclude our series, what we hope that y'all take from this is that brokenness and hope both exist, and the kingdom is present. It's not just something that we talked about in Acts when the early church started, but that the kingdom is now, and each of you plays a part in that. And each of you, at times along your journey, will see hope, will see brokenness, and each of you play a role in acknowledging that hope and in remembering that there is a guy named Jesus who, although we can't see him, is present along our journey. And I pray that even when you feel broken, that you'll remember the stories and how we each can contribute to that in our own unique ways.